How did Campbell ever expect anyone to find this place during a nuclear crisis if it's so far out in the middle of nowhere? Oh. This is how it starts. Little bit of wine, fire in my heart. Gonna make you mine. Give this something real, something more than love, something I can feel. I want to suck your blood. Vampire.
Oh, really? You think you're so tough. But you know what happens to arrogant little boys like you who think they're too cool for school? Sometimes they go a little too far and rub the wrong person the wrong way. And you know what happens then? They disappear. And their little arrogant bodies are never found again.
Campbell ever expect anyone to find this place during a nuclear crisis if it's so far out in the middle of nowhere? Oh. Campbell ever expect anyone to find this place during a nuclear crisis if it's so far out in the middle of nowhere? Oh.
He's just a baby bat, the blonde man cooed. He squeezed Max's cheek with unimaginable strength. Max hissed, flaring his fangs and batting away at the hands that assaulted his cheek. The man laughed a loud, hearty laugh. So young, just a pup. He's quite special though, being able to retract his fangs so smoothly. David nodded vigorously at the compliment. Oh, you have no idea. Max is a fast learner. He's such a good student. Max rolled his eyes as David puffed out his chest in pride. Daniel could see the small smile Max tried to fight off as he buried himself into his hoodie. Ah, so you're his mentor during the summer. How unusual. This all happened by coincidence. Daniel swirled a glass in his hand. There was a sudden edge to his voice now. The boy peeked out from his hoodie, eyebrows raised. David didn't seem fazed. Yep, I've known Max for almost 4 years. It was such luck for him to be sent here with another vampire, and even better now that you're here. Now he has 2 people he can talk to. Oh gosh, this is so amazing. We are so glad to have you here. David rambled, throwing his hands around as he talked. Surely hunting will be easier. Though I'm sure it is already with such small humans they don't put up much of a fight. Daniel laughed and slapped his knee as if he had just told the funniest joke. David blinked. He gently wrapped his arm around Max's shoulders and chuckled dryly. Daniel smiled a wide, alarming smile as he took another small but loud sip of his drink. Max was used to David playing host and serving Cameron's visiting coven friends. Max had tried their customary alcohol. He'd coughed as it burned his throat but left his belly full. David had said it was for guests and special occasions. David never drank in excess like Campbell, and told Max to never do the same. Watching Daniel drink their alcohol with such sharp movement, as if he didn't even want to be holding the glass in the first place, made Max want to take the cup and throw it out of the cabin window. Daniel grimaced as he swallowed. If he doesn't want it, why is he drinking it? Max pondered. He pressed himself closer into David's side, noting that something was terribly wrong. Max whipped his head between David and Daniel, taking in the charged energy. No, we don't drink from the children here. Just between Max and I, the amount we drink, we could harm them. We prefer drinking from the wildlife. David straightened his back. Daniel blanched mid-sip and coughed into his elbow. Oh, he muttered once he recovered. He swirled a glass in his hands, looking down at the deep amber liquid. That would explain the dear blood whiskey. I like such a concoction with the pure stuff, if you know what I mean. I only drink from humans, but if you don't drink from the kids here, I'm sure I can help myself to something across the lake. He shrugged and sat the glass down. He looked with disinterest out of the window. He frowned deeply as thought of what a hassle it would be to travel all the way down the lake for a late-night snack. Max felt David tense, and he was sure Daniel had sensed it as well. He only hoped the blonde vampire hadn't noticed his rapid heartbeat. I'm not one for drinking from animals, if I'm going to be quite honest with you. I think it's rather— He looked back to them, rolling his wrist as he tried to find the word— unsanitary, if you will. I'm used to draining a camper too and moving on. I assumed the same from you two at first. I'll have you know it was quite the shock to learn you actually worked here. I guess the bond between you and the child has made your relationship with the other campers different? Humans are so temporary though, especially the children. There's so much folly in caring for humans. Daniel talked as if the whole thing was a huge taboo. David barked out a laugh. Hardly. I've always respected human life. Always. These campers are my children just as much as they are their parents. I don't take draining a human lightly. This forest is under protection of Cameron Campbell and his coven. If you will be spending your time here with us, you will abide by our feeding schedule and diet. David's eyes narrowed as Daniel looked taken back. Humans are precious. Life is precious, Daniel. David finished with that, leaning back and waiting for the other vampire to respond. Ah, I see. Daniel tapped his chin. Perhaps I shouldn't have assumed that Camp Campbell and the vampire employees here were just a coincidence. I know of Cameron Campbell. Daniel looked down at the floorboards as a creeping grin grew. He looked back to David, the most human vampire of them all. If I'm recalling correctly. Daniel raised his eyebrows. I do think that Cameron Campbell is quite— He tapped his chin. David started to shake his knee. This tastes so good. A vampire was sitting on top of the tree, and the vampire lands onto the floor ground, finishing eating his lunch, and when he was done, hunters started to find him, and the vampire Treston Randon stopped running and saw it in camp that looked so good for hiding away from the hunters, and vampire Treston looked at the hunters and back and goes to the camp to hide away from the hunters that are trying to catch, and vampire Treston reveals himself, reveals self. This tastes so good. This tastes so good. A vampire was sitting on top of the tree, and the vampire lands onto the floor ground, finishing eating his lunch, and when he was done, hunters started to find him, and the vampire Treston Randon stopped running and saw it in camp that looked so good for hiding away from the hunters, and vampire Treston looked at the hunters and back and goes to the camp to hide away from the hunters that are trying to catch, and vampire Treston reveals himself, reveals self.
goes across my teeth. Got a flavor for the young and pretty. Oh, tonight's gonna get the best of me. This is how it starts. Little bit of wine, fire in my heart. Gonna make you mine. Give me something real, something more than love, something I can feel. I want to suck your blood.
Vampire.